Is it? No, it's on.
Look serious. We're gonna take a picture for a bit.
Oh, okay. Where do you want me to be?
There,
Oh,
or right there.
thank you.
It wouldn't happen if there's not a picture.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Town of Mansfield's annual town meeting for budget consideration. The notice and warning for this meeting was posted on the town signboard and website and printed in the Chronicle on May 3rd, 2025. It reads as follows. Town of Mansfield, notice and warning of annual town meeting. The electors of the town of Mansfield and all persons who are entitled to vote in town meeting mentioned in the following warning are hereby warned and notified pursuant to CGS 7-3 that the annual town meeting for budget consideration will be held on Tuesday, May 13th, 2025 at the Mansfield Middle School at 7 p.m. for the following purpose: to act upon the proposed budgets for the town's fiscal year of July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026, which proposed budgets were adopted by the Town Council on April 24th, 2025, and to appropriate the sums estimated and set forth in said budgets to the purposes indicated. Dated and signed at Mansfield, Connecticut, this 30th day of April, 2025, Sarah Ann Chain, Town Clerk. Those eligible to vote at the town meeting include all registered voters and any person who is 18 years of age, a U.S. citizen, and liable to the town for taxes on property assessed for at least $1,000 on the last completed grand list. All those who meet these criteria should have already checked in with the registrar of voters in the hallway and received a ballot before entering the auditorium. If you did not, please take a moment to do so now. We ask that those that are ineligible to vote and observing tonight's meeting sit in the non-voting section to your right. Please set cell phones to silent mode. And I will now entertain nominations for a moderator of tonight's meeting. Mayor Moran has nominated, Deputy Mayor Shaken has seconded, nomination of Bruce Clouet. Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of Bruce Clouet for moderator, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Clouet.
Thank you very much for that vote of confidence. I will do my best to run the meeting in an expedited and fair manner. We have a couple of housekeeping things to do before we get into the program tonight. First of all, without objection, we will appoint Sarah Ann Chain, the town clerk, as secretary for the meeting. Do I hear any objections to that? Sarah Ann Chain, town clerk, will be the secretary for the meeting. Without objection, we appoint Kevin Deneen, town attorney, as parliamentarian for the meeting. Any objections? Seeing none, Kevin Deneen will be our parliamentarian for the night. Unless there is an objection, we will adopt as rules for the meeting Robert's Rules of Order. Is there an objection to adopting Robert's Rules as our rules of order for the meeting? Seeing none, we will proceed according to Robert's Rules of Order. However, traditionally, we make one modification to Robert's Rules. Robert's Rules provides for a 10-minute speaking time on any motion, and we have found that in nearly all cases, 5 minutes is more than adequate, and so we traditionally have adopted a 5-minute speaking rule. The 5 minutes applies in the same way that the 10 minutes would. You can speak for 5 minutes on a motion. After everyone else has spoken on it, you can actually be recognized for an additional 5 minutes if you feel that requires an additional period of time. So potentially, you could still speak for 10 minutes. I can't remember anyone doing that, but those are the rules. So unless there is an objection, we will adopt a 5-minute rather than a 10-minute rule tonight. Seeing none, that will be a modification of Robert's Rules, 5 minutes speaking time. I will discuss other housekeeping sorts of things, raise the hand, come to the mic, etc., when we get to the public part of this. But without further ado, I would like to recognize Mayor Moran for her comments this evening.
Even Bruce is taller than me. Good evening, everybody. This has been a very interesting year. I know that revaluation has been very much on everybody's mind, and Mr. Shakin will speak to it in some detail. I will, this is a personal comment, but it reflects the position of the town generally and also of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. One of the consequences of this reval is that because we rely so heavily on property taxes, it turns into a non-progressive tax. That is, it pays no attention whatsoever to your income, only to the value of your home. So Connecticut has a much higher reliance on property taxes for local government than most states, and you will be seeing some of the consequences of that as we look at as you look at your own individual tax payments. This has been a very interesting year. There have been a lot of successes. We've had several road projects completed, including finally reopening Hunting Lodge Bridge, well, or culvert or bridge. It's sort of halfway between. It was a bigger project than anticipated. We've had major public engagement projects, both with Parks and Recreation planning and with the Northwest area planning, and ongoing right now with our plan of conservation and development. And I do want to point out that the survey for that plan of conservation and development will be open till the end of the month. And if you haven't filled it out and online yet, please do so. There are many ways to access it. But this will be a very important document for our next 10 years. We've had significant housing developments. The affordable housing project on South Eagleville called Eagleville Green will hopefully be opening before the beginning of summer. And the Standard at Four Corners, which has about 390-some apartments, with about 35 of them affordable, should also be opening before the school starts. We have a brand new fire engine, which we celebrated receiving with a traditional washing down ceremony. I don't know why fire engines are so exciting, but they are. Anyway. We have begun significant work to preserve the old town hall and town office building on the top of Spring Hill. Those buildings were in serious danger of almost collapse because of water problems, and there's been a lot of work on it. And we're looking forward to the Historic Society reopening there soon, not soon, but in a couple of months. Our concern, we have a major concern with public safety. We have a returning sergeant, Sergeant King, who has been here as our sergeant in the past, but his presence means more enforcement is what it is, but it's renter-centered, public safety-centered enforcement. It is community policing at its best, and we're very pleased with that development. In addition, we have a new fire chief who's been here for a full year, so he's not really the past year, but the past year and a month. And we have some very major expansion in our fire services as well. We have a continuing improvement in our relationship with the university. The university has appointed people in very significant positions who are town residents, who understand the town and are committed to making relationships between the university and Mansfield work well. It's a real pleasure to work in that environment, I will tell you. And we have a new director of the Mansfield Downtown Partnership. Not a new person to town. Most of you know Steve Farino from one engagement or another, but he will be helping us not only pursue the interests of the Downtown Partnership, but also be working with the town on economic development. He has been the chair of our Economic Development Commission for several years, where he has served really well. Now, in this new budget that we're going to be talking about, there are increases and there are disruptions caused by the revaluation. And Mr. Shakin will talk about that in much greater detail. The good news is, in this budget, we have a sustained contribution from the state. In fact, there are some increases in the contribution, partly due to expansion at UConn. This budget also achieves some very substantial goals that the council has been working on for the past year or more. For example, it improves public safety. We are adding firefighters. Those of you who've been watching the news on the significant decline in the number of professional and volunteer firefighters in the state are aware that this is not an insignificant issue, and Mansfield has really been stepping up. We are improving our services for children, both through the schools and through our youth services programs. We are improving our roads and bridges programs. We've set aside more money for several things there. We will be improving and identifying more clearly our services to Americans veterans. We have hired a part-time planner in, this person will be a full-time planner, but we're hiring the person later in the year to work with planning and development on affordable housing as part of the responsibility. We have added some people for the purpose of maintaining our outdoor spaces. Our trails and parks have been in need of some attention. We are continuing our pay-as-you-go plan. That is, we are not bonding for things that we can save for, and it saves us a great deal of money in interest payments. And it earns us money because in the years that we put that money aside, it's actually earning interest. And we have made a significant attempt to preserve our fund balance. Now, for the future, for this coming year, there's some very interesting things that are being planned. Planning is already beginning for a new senior center. We are in the very early stages of that, but there is planning underway. We will also be undertaking some significant look at our other facilities, and there will be some planning underway for those. We will be working extensively on pedestrian safety, particularly on South Eagleville, where we are hoping that the project, which will begin this summer, will create a boulevard sort of experience, more walkable area, and will slow traffic. Next year, not this year, but next year, we will have a very significant increase in tax revenue with the standard coming fully online. And also the Villages, which is a much smaller development, which is next to the Standard, will also be paying taxes. And finally, we will be getting a fully written plan of conservation and development. We'll be working on this we've worked on it all this year. The work will be continuing, and probably by the end of the year will be complete. So it's been an interesting year. It's a promising year. And I think you'll see from Mr. Shakin's presentation that we've got a really good budget that accomplishes the goals of the people of Mansfield. Thank you.
As is our tradition, I will call upon Councilman Shakin to present the details of the budget, and he will be assisted by the Superintendent of Education on that. Mr. Shakin.
Before I get started, I'd like to ask if anyone is using the American Sign Language services that we have. And if you are, our interpreter would happily come closer to you. Thank you. My name's Ben Shakin. I am the deputy mayor here in Mansfield. I'm also the chair of the council's finance committee. And so, as is our tradition, even though the council as a whole considers this budget and ultimately recommends it to you, the finance chair makes the detailed presentation about our budget. So the mayor went through a number of these things. Just very quickly, what are municipal services? What are we talking about here? What kind of things are we funding through our property taxes, through our town's budget? And so this is a list of them. We'll go through them in proportion in a minute. And a note about our budget process here in town. This budget is a policy document. Of course, all budgets are. It is a process that is basically a year-round process. We are in the bottom, my left-hand corner here, where we're at budget adoption. But basically, as soon as we adopt this budget, the town begins to implement it, and then they begin to work on next year's budget pretty soon after. There's two parts to our budget: an operating budget and a capital budget. We'll go over that as well. Our fiscal year starts on July 1st, and that is why we are here now. And so this is our snapshot of a budget. The total general fund of our budget is just over $68 million. Of that, about $30.5 million funds the town's operations, and the remainder, $25 million for Mansfield Public Schools, and our contribution to E.O. Smith High School, the regional high school, is just over $12 million. Out of that general fund, we also fund capital expenses. We take $5 million out of the general fund and put it into capital, and then there's some other revenue that goes to fund our capital expenses of about $8.7 million. So these are the highlights. The mayor went through most of these. We're going to talk about each of these things in a little bit of detail. The budget provides funding to sustain service levels in all municipal services. That is a long way to say we aren't cutting anything in this budget. This is a budget that continues everything that we are currently doing. It also enhances services in a variety of areas, and we are proposing in this budget to hire staff in these departments. The biggest investment here by far is our fire department. It also assumes that our state aid is going to be relatively stable. It's a small overall increase. The General Assembly in Hartford has about a month left of their legislative session. They have not yet adopted a budget for the next fiscal year. They will do that in a few weeks, but by our charter and by statute, we have to be here tonight. And so we make some assumptions about the funding that we get, the substantial funding that we get from the state. And so we have based this budget off of the governor's proposed budget, the budget that Governor Lamont proposed in February. The General Assembly will be changing that budget. They always do. But it's probably the safest and most conservative bet. The funding usually doesn't go down from what the governor proposes. It meets all of our obligations. As Tony said, it continues our pay-as-you-go, and it preserves a healthy fund balance, which we'll talk about. So before we get into the details of the budget, I do want to spend a couple of minutes talking about revaluation. So we had a revaluation of all of the property in Mansfield this fall. It has to happen. State law requires that it happens every 5 years, and every 10 years is every other 5 years basically is a full revaluation, and that's what we had this year. It is required basically because there's no other fairer way to assess the value of your property that wouldn't be a completely unbearable burden for municipalities. So 5 years ago, your house was evaluated based on current market conditions at the time in 2019, and you received an appraisal from the town's appraisers, and you are taxed at 70% of that appraised value. And then the market has changed, your house has changed, it's gotten older, or you've made improvements, or houses in your neighborhood have sold, or houses like yours around town have sold. And so every 5 years, they sort of reshuffle the values and do that market assessment again. If we didn't do it, you'd be stuck at a value at a point in time that doesn't reflect either positively or negatively the value of your house. And so many municipalities across the state have done this year. And the difference, if you pay any attention to the housing market, the difference over the last 5 years in terms of home values is significant. If you've bought or sold a house, or considered buying or selling a house, or even just watched houses around you transact, you know that they are selling at a very, very high price right now. And as a result, the total value of all of the property in Mansfield on the residential side increased by 55% in October. So October 1st, 2024, 55% higher value than October 1st, 2019. Commercial property grew as well. Although the rate of increase was a little lower, we have added a substantial amount of new commercial property and redevelopment. And so here's the sort of bottom line for you. To calculate what you are going to estimate your taxes are going to be for next year, you take the assessed value of your house, so 70% of that new appraised value, and you multiply, or you divide it by 1,000, and then you multiply it. If the budget stays the same tonight, we will set a mill rate as a council of 20 even. And so that is how you get your number. So you take that assessed value, you divide by 1,000, and then you multiply by the mill rate. It should be noted that this is a good thing. It's not a if you own a house, congratulations, your house has appreciated substantially over the last several years, and the investment, usually everyone's largest investment if you're a homeowner, has appreciated, and you've gained equity in your house. You'll note that this is a substantially lower mill rate. Our mill rate in the current year is about 30.5. And so we are not raising taxes by 53%. We are keeping taxes relatively flat. Talk about some of the nuance of that in a minute. So we are raising around the same amount of money from taxes that we raised last year. We are lowering the mill rate, but assessing that mill rate over a higher total value of property, which is called the grand list. So this is what that grand list is. You'll see October 1st, 2023, a year ago, we had about $1.2 billion of total taxable property in the town of Mansfield. This is how it breaks out. Vast majority of it is residential, real estate, both commercial and residential. We also collect taxes on vehicles, and then businesses pay taxes on their personal property, printers, copiers, x-ray machines, that kind of thing. You'll see the significant change here. That almost $1 billion is now in excess of $1.5 billion, and that's the increase in the value of the real property in this town of about $560 million. Personal property has gone up as well, but it's a smaller number. It hasn't gone up by as much. Vehicle values down a little bit. This is continuing the dropping of car prices since the high in the middle of COVID, when used car values went through the roof, and so they're continuing to come back down to earth, and that's what we're seeing there. So we thought it might make sense to go back over these last 5 years and give a little bit of an overview of what we've invested in the town. You'll see, if you're keeping track, our budget has grown pretty substantially over those 5 years. And so what is it? Why have we done it? There's one thing that's not on this slide that we should have put on. I thought of it when I was sitting there. We've built a new school, which is wonderful. We've made a significant capital expenditure, the first building we've built in this town in a very long time, and we're paying down the debt, the bonds that we issued to build that school. But we've made a commitment. So here's the other things. We made a commitment in the town to expand our fire department. In in the FY21 budget, so 5 budgets ago, there were 17 full-time staff in our fire department. This budget that we are proposing tonight will have 26 full-time members of our fire department in 5 years. It's a 50% increase in the number of full-time personnel and in our budget for personnel for our fire department. There's a lot of factors to this. Our population really hasn't grown either in that period of time, but we're having a lot more coverage. It's an aging population, though, and so our call volume for the fire department has grown. And it's also coincided with the fact that there really aren't volunteer firefighters available the way that there have been in the past. This is something that's happening across the state, nor are there available part-time firefighters, which is part of how we've staffed our department in the past. There's a hiring crunch for qualified people across the entire state of Connecticut, and so the market for part-time folks has shrunk as well. We've also made significant capital investments in the fire department. The mayor mentioned our brand new over $1 million fire truck. This budget that is before you today, the proposed budget includes significant investments in another fire truck and in purchasing ambulances. You'll see the proposed budget for this year is to invest more than $1 million in apparatus, primarily in our capital expenditure for the fire department. We've also made a very significant and concerted investment in road repaving and resurfacing, and really recapturing, taking roads down to nothing and redoing them from scratch. Probably if we had been here 5 years ago, we would have said we had hoped to just add a covering to the roads, but as we have gone into them, we have found pretty systematically that the drainage that goes underneath them pretty much universally needs to be redone. And so we've nearly doubled our paving budget in the last 5 years. We now have been spending the last couple of years $2 million a year on road resurfacing. This budget proposes that as well. It's an 80% increase from 5 years ago. And then there's the other things that every household and every business face. We are not immune to inflation here in the town. The cost of construction, the cost of materials, from printer paper all the way to asphalt, fuel, energy, all those things has faced the same inflation that everyone has felt. And then maybe different from your household, labor costs have been a major driver of inflation for every employer, and that has been, we are not immune to that either. We've had to negotiate salary increases for our staff during this period of time, and other costs related to employment, like our health insurance, have increased significantly, as they have everywhere, and our health insurance increases are up 64% over the last 5 years. And so we've been able to do this, and this is the kind of remarkable thing and why we wanted to kind of highlight it here, without any significant increase, actually with a decrease in everyone's taxes over the last 5 years. And so this is the tax rate starting in 2020. We kept taxes flat for several years during COVID. We had a 3% tax decrease, then a 3% increase, then a 3% decrease again over the last 5 years, sort of netting out to a 0.5% decrease over the last 5 years. So your taxes stayed very constant there, right? The value of your home did not change, and maybe someone can shut those back doors. The registrars are having a boisterous conversation at the table. The value, the amount of your taxes didn't change very much in this period of time or at all, because the value of your home stayed the same. Now we've had the revaluation, and everyone's value of their house changed at a different rate. So our average increase was 55%. Some houses went up by more, some houses went up by less. And as a result, the average increase that's in this budget is 1.1%. That's what that represents. But the last 5 years, if you had a 1.1% tax increase, your taxes would have gone up 1.1%. On average, that's what's going to happen this time. But the average is going to mean a much greater variance of change. There are people whose taxes will go down substantially in this budget, and there are people whose taxes will go up substantially in this budget. And that's what happens every time there's a revaluation. There really is no other way to control for it without making drastic and dramatic cuts and essentially providing a zero tax increase for the person whose home value increased the most, and everybody else's taxes would go down very significantly, which would result in millions of dollars cut out of our budget. So how have we been able to do that? That kind of seems like voodoo, right? We've spent all this new money on these new programs, and we've really kept taxes stable. By far, the biggest factor here is the really excellent representation that we have had in Hartford. Governor Lamont has made it a priority to increase investment in municipalities, and we've had wonderful advocacy from Senator Flexer, Representative Haddad, Representative Boyd, and then before him, Representatives Orange and Smith before redistricting. And as a result, our payments from the state have increased by more than 100% since FY21. We have had a significant investment in what the state pays us in what's called payments in lieu of taxes. That's for the most part what they pay in exchange for UConn being tax exempt based on the value of UConn's property. And they've also made a very significant investment in public education and increased what part of education they fund. And our ECS, Education Cost Sharing Grant from the state, has also gone up by about 24%. We've also had a pretty significant increase in our commercial property here in town. And there's sort of two factors to this. One is that when people build, particularly apartment complexes like the Standard, they have to pay permit fees to get them inspected. And so that's a pretty significant amount of money there. And then secondly, there's just an increase to the value as people have redeveloped property. It's not just the Standard that the mayor mentioned, which will come online this fall. It's also Champagne Motors, where Chipotle and Five Guys now is, a redevelopment there, an expansion of the Graduate Hotel on the UConn campus. And then Eversource is actually our biggest or our second biggest taxpayer. All of the infrastructure that Eversource owns, the high power lines, the natural gas line, are all taxable property. And if it's been more out of the way, but Eversource has done a lot of work, particularly on its high power lines, and the value of those has increased substantially, and they pay a lot of taxes. And then the last piece to highlight here is interest. If you have a savings account, you've noticed this too, right? The interest that you're earning on your savings account is much higher than it has been in the past as interest rates have stayed high from the Fed, and we have experienced that as well. We were making basically nothing in interest in FY21, less than 0.1%. We're now making about 5%, just under. We've also had some cost savings based on school consolidation, and while it still costs money to run the school, it is less money than we would be spending to run 3 elementary schools in all areas: energy, staffing, and so over the last 5 years, we've had about a 7% decrease, and here's a couple of areas where that decrease has been significant, in particular energy costs. So let's go through our budget for this year. That's kind of the 5-year overview. So where do we get our money? Where do we get the revenue that pays for the expenditures in this budget? And you'll see in this pie chart, there's basically 3 categories. There's taxes, there's intergovernmental, and then there's everything else. About 53% of our revenue comes from those property taxes. The remaining 40% comes from what we call intergovernmental. That is primarily those state aid payments, the pilot payments that we receive from the state of Connecticut for our untaxable property and our education funding. And then there's all sorts of other things that make up the remaining 7%, licenses, charges, fines, those kinds of things. And this is a sort of year-over-year comparison of those two things. And I just wanted to point out and highlight here that we are actually proposing to collect a little bit less in taxes this year than last year. Again, because of how that reval worked, it does still mean a small tax increase for residents, but we are collecting less dollars in taxes in the next year, or that is our proposal, by about $1 million, a little over $1 million, and that is being achieved because we are anticipating to receive more in state aid. So this is what we're assuming for our intergovernmental revenue in some more detail. We're assuming a year-over-year increase in our state aid, but there's a little bit of a nuance here. We're assuming kind of flat funding from what we actually got, but what we actually got was more than we budgeted for last year. So we had this exact same conversation last year. We said, state hasn't adopted a budget yet. We're being conservative. We're basing our estimate based on what's put in the governor's budget. Lo and behold, the state adopts a budget and we get an increase in funding, a substantial one from the state. And so what we've put in this budget is a flat from that, but it is an increase over what we budgeted for last year. And so it equals about $27 million, and that's the breakdown of where it's coming from and where the increases are. You'll see the biggest increase there is in our educational cost sharing grant. We got an extra 19% from ECS last year. We expect that will be relatively flat this year. And this is a chart just kind of showing what I highlighted a few slides ago about that increase. You'll see that investment over the last 5 years, that increase in state aid that's come from the state legislature and the governor. We saw a reduction in that aid during periods of very bad state budgets, and it was always something that we were very concerned about on the town council. And as a town, we rely really heavily on these pilot funds in Mansfield, and if the state ever stopped making these investments in state aid, we would be in a tough spot. And so that's why we've set a lot of the revenue growth goals and stuff that we have here as a way to try to diversify our revenue in case that ever happens. But it's not happening right now, and clearly we've seen a very significant increase. Okay, so where are we spending the money? And this is where it all breaks down. It's too small for me to see. So the biggest portion of this here is education. We spend well over half of our budget on education. The dark portion there is our Mansfield Public Schools. The yellow portion is the region. And then the rest of the chart is broken up by the different municipal departments. There's departments within our school systems too, but because of how this works, your options at tonight are to make reductions to these departments in these charts, and Bruce will explain all that later. You'll see the other areas here where the significant expenditure, general fund expenditure revenue goes. Public safety is probably the other big chunk outside of general government, which includes most of the rest of the town staff. Public safety is a pretty big part of what we spend our money on. That's our police department. We have at the moment 11 full-time state troopers in Mansfield as our police force, and then we have a fire department that this budget we are proposing to extend to 26 staff members. This is a sort of year-over-year summary of that. You'll see where the increases here are. We do have an increase in all of these budgets this year. The municipal budget on the operating side is proposed to increase by about 5.5%. When you back out some of these service improvements that we're proposing, these new staff that we're proposing to hire, it's a budget that's pretty much in line with inflation. And the same goes for our public school system, about a 3% increase. The superintendent and the chair of the Board of Ed will go through that in some detail in a moment. And the region's budget is a smaller increase, and that's not because they haven't had a similar inflationary increase. It's that our portion of their budget is determined based on how many kids from Mansfield are in the school compared to the other towns. And so while their budget went up by more, ours went up by a lower proportion, and Ashford and Willington have borne a bigger share of that cost. And that varies depending on the year. There's more kids from one town in one year and another town in another year. So these are the kind of drivers of the increases. We've got our service improvements, employee wages and benefits, capital projects, and our debt service. So what are the service improvements? It's new staff. As we've said, we're planning in this budget to hire 2 additional full-time firefighters on July 1st, and that's a cost of $233,000. And these are the other new staff that are proposed in the budget. A housing inspector upgrade from part-time to full-time, 1 full-time laborer on the grounds division of the public works staff for additional parks, recs, and open space maintenance. That's in line with one of the council's goals, which is to make a lot of investments in our parks and open space. And the Public Works Department does the day-to-day maintenance of those areas. There's a partial year hire, a couple of them in this budget. That position is one of them. The other one is a full-time town planner in the planning office. We've been doing a lot of planning. You've been talking to a lot of consultants if you've been participating in it. And having someone to coordinate that at a community-wide level we think would be really important. And then there's some other staff in our Human Services Department working at the Senior Center and in our library. And so the total cost of these new staff in the next year's budget is about $440,000. Now, why are we hiring some of these folks part of the way through the year? It's a budget. It's a function of our budget. Budgeting more than anything is an effort to keep our taxes flat this year. As the mayor mentioned, we are expecting within the next fiscal year that the standard at Four Corners will open, and we'll be starting to contribute a major, like several $1 million a year in property taxes. And so we are anticipating that the full cost of these new positions, rather than ballooning our tax outlay next year, will be able to be absorbed with that new revenue. There's another driver, employee wages and benefits. We have obligated and non-discretionary, meaning we don't have a choice. We have a contract with one of 3 unions, or all of 3 unions in our town that require annual increases in employee wages. That costs us $500,000 a year. We also have an increase in our health insurance this year. It's relatively stable this year, but it is an increase of about $50,000. Our contribution to the retirement program, the municipal retirement program our employees participate in, has also increased, and there's been some changes in Social Security and Medicare taxes as well. We are proposing to make some investments in capital projects that we are sort of behind, I think, frankly, and the council's been working hard to try to get back up to speed. Road resurfacing, transportation, ambulance, and partial funding of a new fire truck. Some significant renovations to this building, making the entrance safer, and as well as investments at the public library, at the historic town hall, at the community center, and at the Discovery Depot. We're also doing some pretty substantial improvements at Bicentennial Pond, a new bathhouse that will not be gross, and we're very happy about it. And then finally, and this one is, we've been waiting a long time to talk about this. We are proposing in this budget to replace our animal control facility just down the road from here, which if you've ever been there or adopted an animal out of there, it looks exactly the same as whenever you went, however many decades ago that was. And so our hand here is finally being forced. There's some new safety regulations for animal control facilities where we are now required by 2029 to replace this building. And so there's some budget nuance to how it shows up in our budget. You'll see it in our expenditures, but not in our not in the revenue that we're raising from taxes, and that is because we are anticipating we will be asking the town to approve that project at referendum in the November election, which it's a big enough project that we need to borrow money to construct it. It's going to cost about $2.5 million, and doing that requires a referendum vote, which we will do in November. So here's where the investments in capital improvements lie. You'll see the biggest pieces here are our Public Works Department and our Facilities Management Department. That makes sense. Most of their expense is capital. The road paving is a capital expense, and that's most of what takes up Public Works time, and the facilities management, maintaining all of our buildings, is where all those renovations lie. That facilities management chunk there is usually a lot smaller, but that is where the animal control shelter lives in this pie chart, which is why it's very large in this graph. So this is the revenue that comes in. This is how we fund our capital projects. We are proposing a $5.3 million contribution from the general fund, which first travels to what's called the capital non-recurring fund, and then is distributed out of that fund to pay for these projects as they come up. And about $4.6 million of that is coming from the general fund. We also collect some fees from insurance companies if you go to the hospital in one of our ambulances, and get some revenue from Pequot Mohegan grant. We get some other revenue here as well from the state and federal government. And then we are proposing what's called a capital lease on the ambulance, which is getting recognized first on this side as revenue and then as an expenditure. And then this is where the bond lives for the animal shelter as well, the anticipated bond of $2.5 million. So this is the next driver in our budget. This is our debt service. At this point, primarily, this is the 20-year bond payment for our school. And that is what you see here. We anticipate paying, for now, about $2 million a year for our debt service. The school portion will start to go down, but we are, as the mayor mentioned, also working on a number of municipal facility construction projects over the next several years. And so this chart will change based on that. This is fund balance, and I don't think a finance chair has ever quite figured out how to explain this super well. It's not our savings account, but it is our savings account. Fund balance is an accumulation of revenue less our expenditures in a given governmental fund, meaning that it is money that we are planning to collect and not spend. And the reason that we do this is so that we have a rainy day fund. If we do need to spend money, we have 17% of our budget available to us. But really the reason that we do this is so that when we borrow money, bond rating agencies give us a very good rating. And they have told us and other municipalities that they want municipalities to have at least 17% of their annual budget in fund balance. And you will see over the years we have worked towards that goal. This was a major goal of one of my predecessors, Bill Ryan. If you went back, I joined the council at the beginning of this chart, and Bill was already there for 10 years. So if you go back 10 more years, we were very much lower than this and have worked steadfastly to get to that target level. And as a result, when we ask to bond and issue debt, we are getting good rates on it. And I will now, I will stay here, but from this table, our Superintendent of Schools, Peter Dart, and the Chair of our Board of Education, Kathy Ward, will talk about the Board of Ed budget. And guys, I think just give me a wave and I'll click. Does that work? Do you want give me a wave and I'll click.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good evening. We're pleased to present to you our 25-26 proposed budget. This budget is aligned to our district's mission, which is to ensure that each and every child develops the knowledge, skills, and dispositions essential for civic engagement and personal excellence in learning, life, and work. And our core beliefs that begin with leading with equity. It reflects the needs of our students, staff, and programs as we endeavor to support each and every child. Our district development plan is guided by our key drivers of knowing students, supporting the whole child, and growing educators. Just as any organization's budget reflects its priorities, this budget was developed to ensure that our district continues to provide the excellent educational opportunities for our students that our community deserves and rightfully expects. Our return on investment, I'd like to highlight a few of the Mansfield Public Schools' achievements and accomplishments, and there are many more than this. I'll begin with our elementary school being ranked number 11 in Connecticut and our middle school number 20 in Connecticut by U.S. News and World Report. Becky Granatini, our elementary school assistant principal, was selected as a finalist for the Connecticut Association of Schools Assistant Principal of the Year. Jen McMunn was selected as Connecticut Teacher of the Year and National Teacher of the Year finalist for National History Day project. 4 of our Mansfield Public School educators were named Fund for Teacher Fellows. We've increased overall performance in math and English language arts. We've decreased chronic absences by over 6%, and while we've increased our district educator diversity. We launched a new full-day pre-kindergarten program, increased the number of field trips, enriching experiences, and after-school activities at both of our schools. We have many things to be proud of in our district. This budget that has been crafted allows us to continue with the breadth and depth of our programming. Our proposed district budget is $25.6 million. That's a 3.24% increase over the current budget. After 5 weeks, 4 meetings, and many workshops with bipartisan and near unanimous support, our board approved this proposed budget. As you may know, last year was a 0 budget increase. Our superintendent's team and the finance team strive to be as fiscally sound while ensuring our district is on a sound footing. And now I'll let Superintendent Dart get into a little more detail.
Thank you and good evening. As always, it's an honor and privilege to serve our children, our staff, our families, and community. Very similar to what the deputy presented for the town, we see some common themes. In the Board of Education budget, a main driver are obligated salaries and benefits, which makes up 85% of the budget. And this year we saw over a $500,000 increase. Student transportation is 5.25% of the total budget. That's about $1.3 million. Interestingly enough, the educational supplies, the essence of classrooms, the pencils, papers, and things like that, really is about 1% of our budget, maybe $270,000. That's the discretionary money that teachers spend to support the work of our schools and classrooms and programs. Overall, this budget is creative, innovative, it grows, it supports, but it's fiscally responsible. The quality and level of services will continue to meet the mark and expectations of this community. Several budget drivers are just a reality of our budget. And again, you'll see the pattern between the deputy's presentation of the town budget in terms of obligated contracted salary agreements, benefits, but we also have energy and building maintenance, inflation, special ed costs, and contracted costs. We saw an increase in salaries by nearly $400,000, benefits by over $100,000, transportation costs increased by $167,000, energy costs were up, outplacement tuition for students up, and building maintenance. Yet it is important to be fiscally responsible. And as the deputy pointed out, the new elementary school is a shining example of how we've invested in our future in 21st century learning, but it's recognized each and every day that there's cost avoidance. Not too long ago, our students were in overcrowded, substandard school buildings, and this is a hallmark not only to our community, but to the state as we celebrate our net zero goal. We further developed this budget to make sure that we were right-sizing the district. We're facing declining enrollment. It's a reality that we see across not only Connecticut, but across the country. And we were able to decrease staffing by 3.5 teaching positions. That's not easy. We follow attrition, retirements. We make hard decisions to make sure that we're adjusting and nimble enough to flex as we see our declining enrollment without changing the quality of our services. We decreased the number of teacher leader positions, decreased our equipment and repair by having staff do more in-house repairs. I want to shout out the IT team for leading the challenge and using our experts within the district and town for that. We're also doing more evaluations within the district rather than using outside evaluations. And the new elementary school is a shining example not only of 21st century teaching and learning, but the net zero goal really profoundly breaks the bonds of fossil fuels, eliminating a huge carbon footprint. And so while you see a $5,000 reduction in fuel oil, that's very significant to us because in our budget, we're not buying fuel oil and fossil fuels. Lastly, the main driver, being staffing, 85% of our budget, is based on enrollment. We're gearing up to see perhaps 70 less students in our schools, and we see this tracking across the grade levels. Every 2 years, we do a very detailed 10-year enrollment projection study, and so we want to make sure that we're adjusting, again, making those hard decisions, following retirements and attrition, and being creative about how to continue to grow and be innovative, but yet make the reductions when we need to. The Board of Ed has set class guidelines, which we follow. It ensures small class sizes. We look for scheduling efficiencies. Again, consolidating 3 elementary schools, we're seeing efficiency in staff and schedules that 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we didn't have. I talked about the retirements and attrition and the following the needs and data. The box to the right in this slide, you can see the reductions in the full-time staff, 2nd grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, a half-time enrichment at the middle school, and a behavior technician for the elementary school. I did talk about innovative and growing. We have to respond to the needs of our community, of our students. So we were blessed to be able to onboard 2 social workers with the support of town council and human services. We utilize school mental health grants from the state to offset the costs, but now they're on our budget and on our watch. And we know that that's a good move for our kids and our families, that we see the need for social emotional learning, but we also need wraparound services that support families that are struggling. We have a math interventionist position that we're adding at the elementary school, again, following our data and our needs. This is a person, student-facing, that will support tiered intervention for students and also support staff in their needs and how to best support their kids in the classroom. We're adding a 0.5, a half-time technology integration specialist We know the world is rapidly changing with AI, and we know that our students need more STEM, robotics, coding activities, and so this is a good move because we're going to take advantage of the 0.5 reduction in the enrichment and offset that with this new technology integrationist. So we think it's going to be the same person. That's our intent. So it's one person, but half of their responsibility would be to support the growing area of technology in our schools. We could talk all night about the number of students in our music programs. If you've been to any of our concerts, you're going to see a majority of our students perform either in choral, strings, or traditional band instruments. And so our strings program at the elementary school has grown exponentially. So I'm very excited to see this 0.75 position go to a full-time. We also are adding a board-certified behavior analyst, a BCBA, for the elementary school. This is a certified position that brings a level of expertise that is needed. It also will allow us to back away from contracted services from EastCon and other providers by having this expertise in-house. And then lastly, 0.3 paraeducators. We had a couple of part-time, and we want to be able to build them up so that they're full-time members. We get a bigger bang for our buck when somebody's full-time and able to spend the entire day supporting our programs. And with that, I will turn it over to the deputy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we get into the taxes piece of this. That you recognize this slide if you've been to this meeting before. What I will tell you is that this slide is only valuable to you this year if your house is the median house. So congratulations if it's you. You have a valuable piece of information here. As I said at the beginning, the rate of change in everyone's home value is different. It's not just a standard across the board percentage increase. Different parts of the market changed at different rates based on sales in town, based on comparable sales. Neighborhoods changed in value. All sorts of factors went into the assessment. They're not perfect, I will say. There's an appeals process that many people in town have undertaken. And so normally we show this slide just because median is probably the best way to explain the change that we're proposing in this budget. This year, again, the what house is the median on this list even changed. So this house, looking at a year-over-year change for them, shows you what the increase would be for them. But again, it's going to vary wildly depending on how much your home value changed. And similarly, on the right hand, your right hand side of this slide, we look at a year-over-year comparison of the mill rate. It would be a great political talking point for me to get up here and say that we reduced the mill rate by 35%, and it would be true, but it doesn't mean that your taxes are going down by 35%. So again, this piece is not, we do this every year, so we wanted to include it, but in a reval year, it doesn't have a ton of value. And so this is where your tax dollars go in the budget. This median house, again, on our list, which is paying us just over $5,000 a year in taxes on their house. $2,800 of that goes to education, and then the remainder is the different parts of municipal government, public works, public safety, capital improvements, and health and welfare, as well as our general government. So just to summarize, and then it's your turn to discuss and debate the budget. This is what is in the budget. We're providing funding to sustain all of our services, no cuts in the municipal services on this budget, and we are proposing, in fact, to add services primarily in fire and EMS, continuing to grow our fire department. It assumes relatively stable state aid. It projects a new mill rate of 20 even, and it meets all of our contractual obligations. It continues our pay-as-you-go capital plan. We've mentioned that a couple of times, but we haven't actually explained it, so let me take 10 seconds here. We've talked a little bit about borrowing for some buildings. We generally do not borrow money here in this town, and we have saved, as a result of this plan, a lot of interest. Many towns borrow money for fire trucks and ambulances and plows and to pave their roads. And we have made a commitment for at least the last 2 decades to pay for these capital expenses through our tax revenue as we go in cash. We save money over a period of years for big projects. So, for example, in this budget, we are proposing a contribution that is equal to about a quarter of a fire truck, and we're going to make that contribution every year for a few years and then order the truck and pay cash for it. And then finally, it preserves that healthy and desired fund balance in the general fund of 17%. Before I make our motion and get the debate on the floor this evening, I wanted to thank all of our elected officials that you see here. They are seated in the front middle of this room. If everyone who's on the town council or either Board of Education wants to just stick a hand up and wave to the crowd, and thank you. As Chairman Ward mentioned, there are lots and lots of meetings and work sessions with staff where we go through these budgets that the superintendent and the town manager propose in great detail. I also want to thank our staff who do this work, who started this process back in November. Our town manager, Ryan Aylesworth, and our superintendent, Peter Dart, who proposed ultimately the work of their staff to their boards after much consideration. Also, Maria Capriola, our Chief of Shared Services and Administration, and Amanda Bacchus, who's our Director of Finance. And when I say our, I mean our. Maria's title is the Chief of Shared Services because we share a number of our town departments between the town and the Board of Education and everything else that the town manages. And so Amanda is not only the town's finance director, she's also the finance director for the Mansfield Public Schools, for the Region 19 Public Schools, for the Eastern Highland Health District, for everything else. Jamie, our IT director, same thing. And Maria oversees that entire part of our budget. And we, as a municipality, not every town does it this way, and we save a considerable amount in administration by working together. And these are all the department heads on the town side whose work contributed to this budget. Thank you to all of them as well. Okay, I'm going to skip this slide because Bruce is going to say it later as he explains what to happen. I'll skip back to it after I make the motion. So I'm going to put a motion, a long motion, it's a 4-slide motion on the floor, and that is the motion that will put this budget up for your consideration. And Bruce will explain when he comes back up when I'm done what debate around the budget will look like. So, resolved that the proposed general fund budget for the town of Mansfield for fiscal year July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026, in the amount of $56,093,350, which proposed budget was adopted by the council on April 24th, 2025, be adopted and that the sums estimated and set forth in said budget be appropriated for the purpose intended. Further resolved that in accordance with Connecticut General Statute Section 10-51, the proportionate share for the town of Mansfield of the annual budget for the regional school district number 19 shall be added to the general fund budget appropriation for the town of Mansfield for fiscal year July 1, 2025 to June 30, 2026, and said sum shall be paid by the town to the regional school district as they become available. Further resolved that the proposed capital projects budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2025 to June 30, 2026 in the amount of $8,710,000 be adopted, provided that the portion proposed to be funded by bonds or notes shall at the appropriate times be introduced for action by the town council, subject to a vote by referendum as required by Section 407 of the town charter. And finally, resolved that the proposed capital and non-recurring reserve fund budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2025 to June 30, 2026 in the amount of $5,266,300 be adopted.
We have a motion on the floor. Strictly speaking, the motion does not require a second, but sometimes people would like to second it. So if anyone would like to second it, now would be the time. Thank you very much. We now come to the part of the meeting in which you, the citizens of Mansfield, debate the merits of the budget as proposed by Council Member Shaken. And I would like to establish some procedures, the same procedures we've used in the past. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. And if you're in the last 2 rows where it's kind of dark, give a little wave, okay? And I will call on you. When I call on you, come to one of the 2 microphones, state your name and address, and begin your 5-minute comment. If you cannot come to a microphone, we do have a hand mic that we can pass to you. If for some reason, for mobility, what have you, you can't come to a microphone, again, wave and we will get a microphone to you so everyone can hear you. When you come to the microphone, you can do one of four things. First of all, you can make comments on the budget, pro and con. And I would note that Robert's rules require all comments to be relevant, first of all. In other words, there's many things we could discuss about the town tonight, but really we have to focus in on the budget, on the question. So please, no extraneous issues. Thanks. Second of all, you can debate the merits of the budget, but it's not proper to question the motives or the sanity or whatever of other speakers. And the reason for this, the reason Robert Rules contains this provision is not that we are concerned about hurt feelings. It's because that kind of a comment doesn't really advance the decision-making process. If anything, it slows it down. So be relevant and be civil. So you can comment pro and con on the proposed budget. Second of all, you can ask a factual question about the budget. And if it's a matter of factual information, we will ask the relevant staff member, be it Board of Education or the town side, to provide you the information that you request. If you do ask a factual question, that doesn't count towards your 5 minutes, and the response of the town staff does not count to your 5 minutes. So the clock sort of stops at that point, and then you can resume speaking, and the clock starts where it left off. Thirdly, you can vote to amend the budget. Amending the budget means you can propose decreasing or increasing any program in the budget. And if you will look at your handout, you will see that the programs as enumerated on pages 24 to 25 are the only things that you can propose increasing or decreasing. The programs on the town side are several different departments, and you can say program 12100, I propose a $100,000 decrease. I would note that Board of Education is a single program within this budget. So for Board of Education things, you can't say, I want to cut out erasers. Do they even have erasers anymore? They don't, do they? Okay, but you can't be specific. You can merely propose decreasing item 60001, education K-8, by X number of dollars. And that is a proposed amendment. The amendment will require a second. And then, instead of addressing the budget as a whole, we will address your amendment. Now, if you're nervous about making an amendment or not sure you've made it in quite the right way, the staff will help formulate the amendment so that all the technicalities are covered. And we'll work on it here, and then the amendment will be displayed up there, and we will discuss it. Finally, when you come to the mic, you can ask that the assembly end debate. This is sometimes called calling the question, calling the previous question, motion to end debate. This requires an immediate vote that must be passed by 2/3 of the assembly. The reason Robert's Rules requires a 2/3 vote on ending debate is this. The whole purpose of tonight is for citizens to express their views, to engage with each other and say what they think. If you close debate, then we immediately vote on whatever motion is pending, whether it's an amendment or the main motions to adopt the budget. So if you propose closing debate, understand that potentially you're cutting off some of your fellow townspeople. By the same token, if we really have exhausted all that needs to be said, and people feel that everything has been said, then 2/3 of the people will vote to cut off debate, and then we will proceed to whatever motion is pending. So that's the nuance of the motion to close debate. And it's not up to me, it's up to you. We will take all our votes by voice votes. If it appears to be close, we will go to a show of hands. The final vote, however, will be taken by paper ballot, and hopefully you have your paper ballot here ready to mark. When we come down to that final vote, we would ask that you come down and then go up the outer aisles. You come down, deposit your vote. Don't stand around and schmooze. It's fun to do so, but proceed to the back of the room and continue to socialize. But we'll keep it moving as much as possible. Having said that, I would ask for comment on the proposed budget. Who would like to be the first to speak? Somebody raise their hand. I'm not seeing anyone. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this budget? This has never happened before. We can, at this point, go directly to the paper ballot vote. However, I do not want, oh, we do have someone. Yes, come forward. Thank you. Name and address, please. Robert Brandon. Oh, when you get to the mic.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Rod Brandon. I live at 22 Pine Ridge Lane. And I'd like to move to increase the Mansfield Board of Education budget in the amount of 1 full-time equivalent position. Is that a reasonable request, or do I need to specify a dollar amount?
You need to specify a dollar amount. Or we can ask what that amount ought to be. Do we have a, can we, his motion is to add a position. Do we have an average amount for that would be reasonable?
$57,845.
Okay, so your motion is then to increase the education budget, which is program 60001, by, again, Peter?
57,845.
Okay, good. Is there a second?
That's good.
Is there a second to that motion? Otherwise, we're not going to, I see a second. Would you like to continue to speak to your motion?
Thank you. I'd love to speak in support of my motion. As Superintendent Dart had mentioned, in the current proposed education budget, the Mansfield Middle School Math and Science Enrichment position is being reduced from 1 full-time equivalent position to a half full-time equivalent position and consolidated with a 1/2 full-time equivalent position, district-wide technology integration specialist position. I believe historically one of our district's greatest strengths has been our ability to directly support our students with enrichment opportunities. And the consolidated position seems like it may be more focused on supporting teachers and staff. And I do tend to agree that the technology integration position is absolutely worthwhile and necessary as well. And that is why my proposal would be to maintain the math and science enrichment position at 1 full-time equivalent and to increase the new technology integration position also as 1 full-time equivalent position.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded to increase program number 60001, Education K-8, by $57,845. At this point, we want to hear people speak on this amendment. And if we adopt the amendment, then it will become part of the proposed budget. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's clear what we're discussing now. We're discussing the amendment to add. Would anyone else like to speak on this? Yes, sir. Come to the mic.
Toffer Logan, 166 Baxter Road.
Could you get a little closer to the mic?
Sorry, Toffer Logan, 166 Baxter. Mostly just a question, if the 57,845 includes fringe benefits and everything, is that all in, or is that just the salary?
Okay, did you hear the question? It was, what
Yes,
does the
it includes
57,000
benefits, yes.
include? Peter, your answer?
It includes benefits.
That's it.
Okay, so salary and benefits is the answer to that. Other people, what's your pleasure on this? Would anyone else like to address the question of increasing the education budget? Okay, yes, ma'am. We can get you a mic. Or you can come to a mic. Okay.
I'm Liz Holzer at 17 Eastwood Road. I'm wondering if the superintendent could speak to this motion, which sounds like good from the start of it, but I'm wondering why it was originally slated for cutting, and if you would support this motion.
I'm going to just correct something here, and that is that normally we don't ask staff to take a position on the merits of a proposal like this. It's really up to you to say whether you would be in favor of it or not. So unless you have a great objection to that, I'm going to say that it's not what they proposed, it's what a citizen proposed, and we should discuss the merits of that citizen's proposal.
I will just speak in general terms then. We make hard decisions, and we see opportunities to right size when there are retirements, but we also see opportunities to change our thinking. The middle school has not always had 2 enrichment teachers, and enrollment justified adding, and so that logic would follow that you adjust as you go. And I would just say that this was after a careful consideration from building level leadership and the Board of Education.
Okay, thank you. Other comments on increasing the education budget by this amount? Please raise your hand or I'm going to call for a vote on the motion. All right. The motion is, as you see here, to increase the education budget, program 60001, education K-8, by $57,845. All those who are in favor of this, please say aye. All those who are opposed, say no. I'm going to ask for a show of hands, okay? Are you ready to count? Okay, registrars are ready to count. Where are they? All right. All those who are in favor of increasing the education budget by this amount, please raise their hand and keep it up. All right, is someone counting? Just as a security, will you hold your ballot so that we know that you are one of the eligible voters? All those in favor are holding up their ballot. All those opposed to adding this amount to the education budget, please raise your hand with your ballot in it. The motion passes. The budget that we are now voting on includes this increase of $57,845. So we're back to the original budget amounts proposed by Councilmember Shaken, with the exception of including this revised amount. Are we going to have that on the screen? Okay, it's coming up on the screen. Now, if you want to further comment on the overall budget, this would be the time. Please raise your hand if you want to make further comment on the overall budget. Otherwise, we will proceed to the paper ballot vote. Is there anyone that wants to say anything? You? Oh, all right. Mayor Moran, who is entitled to speak as a resident of the town, certainly. Go ahead.
I just want to point out that any additions will raise the tax rate.
You are well within your 5 minutes, Mayor Moran. Other comment on the amended budget? All right, we are going to proceed to the vote. What? Oh, okay, in the back there. Yes, sir. Or do you want the microphone, or are you going to come to the microphone? Okay, good. I'm sorry, the back is very poorly lit, and so I very much appreciate you looking out for each other so that we get as much comment as people want to make. Name and address.
I am Ben Willis at 133 Spring Hill Road. I have a question. I'd like to find out if there are more details available about the general government budget, what's in it exactly, and also the transfers. There. The transfers and other financing uses, are there, is there more information about those two items?
Okay, let me ask the town manager to address that, and you can tell us if he's answered it.
So I want to make sure I heard your question. You asked about what's included in the general government budget and then the transfers in the
Yes.
general fund. So the general administration or general government budget includes management, so like the office of the town manager, human resources, the council's budget, the legislative budget, also includes town clerk, the assessor's office, the revenue or tax collector's office, planning and zoning, sort of our environmental protection functions, and then also IT. And the transfers, which you kind of see listed at the end of the budget, those are transfers of monies out of the general fund into another fund or to another entity. So by way of example, there's a transfer from the general fund to the capital non-recurring fund. The deputy mayor talked about that. That's $4.6 million. That's money that comes out of our general operating budget and goes into a holding tank, if you will, for capital projects. Other transfers would be things like transferring money from the general fund to the Parks and Recreation Fund, because that's its own separate dedicated fund. It's not part of the general fund. And there are several others, but that gives at least a sense of what's included there, if that's helpful.
Okay, thanks. I think it might be helpful to have some sort of breakdown included in the budget documents here. Some, like in the future.
Yeah, page, I think 24, at least by program area, includes, I think, all the level of the detail that you're looking for. But information is in there. I know it can be a bit of a complicated document, a lot of information, but certainly that line item detail that you're inquiring about is included in there for your review.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are you going to put the name by resolution? Yes, go ahead. Let's take the resolutions up with the amendment and when the time comes.
Hello, my name's Patrick Boyne, and I live on 45 Farmstead Road. I just have a question because I'm confused about how it works. So we just voted to increase the allocation for the Board of Education, ostensibly for a particular need. How is the money that we just voted on earmarked for that particular need, or is that not how it works? It's just there's more money in the.
Yeah, the answer is that the Board of Education budget is a program that has been amended, and the clear intent of the meeting here tonight was that that was going to go to the addition of a particular staff position. However, strictly speaking, the Board of Education makes that decision of how to allocate money. So I see no reason why they wouldn't follow the sense of this meeting, but I think that's the correct answer. Peter?
I would defer to the board to that.
Right, okay. So you understand the answer. It's sort of, yes, probably, but strictly speaking, they have a lot of latitude as to how they allocate funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Someone else? All right, we are going to go to a vote on adopting the budget. These are the resolutions that were read at the start of the meeting. And I would just suggest that the motion include the words "as amended at this meeting." Uh-oh. I hope I didn't screw things up. All right. Technically, I am supposed to read verbatim virtually the same motions that Councilmember Shaken did, but unless there's somebody that's dying to hear me read them, we will proceed to have them on the screen and proceed to the paper ballot vote. Okay, paper ballot vote. Mark your piece of paper, yes or no, on the budget as amended. Come forward, deposit your ballot in the ballot box. All right, I'm instructed to tell you not to fold your piece of paper. Apparently that clogs the works. And then proceed to the back or to your seat, whichever. Proceed to your seat or to the back of the room, but don't clog the front.
Well done. Another successful.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to get away with no questions. I've never seen that.
I don't think they understood it's going to happen.
Yes. One of my other towns modifies Robert's rule. So you can call the question at least 15 minutes.
We talked about that. Yeah.
Because in that town, they actually had some. Literally, first speaking, call the question. Ran it.
All right, I would have ruled that out of order because, well, I don't know if I could have, but it just seems
Let
to,
him challenge the ruling of the chair.
yeah, I mean, that just seems to be so against the
So
order of
contrary
the
to the
business,
whole-
you know?
And that's why that town just put it in.
Yeah.
But then we had a when they did that. And then we're like, hey, if you had 5 minutes of conversation, then.
I thought it was important to explain the implications.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? It's such wisdom to have the two-thirds threshold, you know, because you protect the right of the minority to speak, but you also protect the right of the majority not to have the thing dragged out.
It's worse than this. It's something I think we're lost. Civility. This, something you don't disagree, you don't agree with.
Absolutely.
Give them their chance to say that.
Yep. That was a surprise. I don't think they realized it was at that point. I thought I had made it clear, but. I like the food. Howard Granfield always. Yeah, I know. And he used to always be the one that would jump up and say that. Oh, I can say that a lot. All right, we want to make sure that everyone who is intending to vote has deposited their ballot in the boxes. The tellers will count the vote, and I will announce the vote. At that point, the meeting will have accomplished what is required, and we will be adjourned. But I will announce the vote once it's ready.
Act up and. Spoke to talk to Chris also.
Okay.
His actions. I sent them, I said, no redaction, so. If IT was something. Really? Thank you. Always.
Oh, yeah, what? Oh, thank you.
It's like a 1 minute. It's like a game. Right. That comes out clean. Right. That comes out clean with the other. Right.
May I have your attention, please? The ayes, the yes vote was 131, the no vote was 15. The budget resolutions are passed. Thank you very much. The meeting has concluded its business. We are adjourned. Thank you. Very good. 1-5.